Tickets, please. Kia ora. Hello from New Zealand, David Feng with you. Tickets at the ready. We've been doing a fair bit of trains as of late, in particular these three, from Medlink in Wellington. They are pretty much, buy them today, they'll be gone. The single journey tickets available on board, and of course, it obviously means I've been travelling a fair bit by rail, the whole family as well. Sydney, Auckland, and Wellington now. And here's something you may not have noticed here. I am known for two things. First of all, this microphone, which AI decided, by the way, to give it a very special name, Big Squish, and of course, trains. There's a little bit of both there. I remember back in the day when you had those trains with rather forgiving doors, where, if you had your hand squished by the door, it would seem less like you had your bones broken than the more modern ones. Talking about that, it's a usability thing, and these tickets there, are they usable? They are usable. You also tend to lose them a lot, which is why these days more and more of these are becoming... I remember when I went to the Netherlands in 2012, they had this thing called the OV chip card, basically a chip card, like a public transport card, but for all of public transport. Being Swiss, this was kind of new, but not all too new. At home we have the Swiss Pass, but the integratedness, so to speak, of European transport systems make it far more viable to just be tap and go. So these single journey tickets, they will be missed when they slowly but surely fade into the background. Now, I'm playing my cards right. Sydney, Australia was pretty much the very first place we touched down in. And in late 2019, I was more than aware of the new Sydney Metro, Tallawong to Chatswood. Now, since then, been expanded further south to Sydenham. And the Bankstown part coming a bit later on as well, hopefully sooner than later. So, Opal card, really, really the one card you want. I remember they've got capping. So... something you really need to, really worth checking out there. They have single journey tickets as well. They're more like a card. This works across, the metro system, the trains, and of course, light rail. Being a European, we call it a tram back at home. But so, I was actually thinking about T. In Sydney, you've got, the abbreviation, so metro is an M. And so the first time I looked at T, I was like thinking, tram. No, that was Sydney Trains, not trams. Trams in Sydney, trams in Sydney rather, they call it light rail, which is not the kind of, nomenclature, we're used to in Zurich. So it took me a little bit of time, but the Opal card got me pretty much places across much of Sydney. We finally did the entire length of the train from Tallawong via Chatswood all the way to Sydenham. Chatswood is one station I really like. It's a little bit interesting. Being to Hong Kong so many times, it reminds me to say Sha Tin Station in the New Territories, which was basically, one of those really easy to use stations, except for this one was better than Sha Tin. This had a world famous MTR cross-platform interchange between Sydney Trains and the Sydney Metro, and it's the kind of stuff that's like, well, the MTR's doing it, so of course they're going to be doing something like that. And Chatswood remains one of my favourite stations on the Sydney network, simply because it's so easy to go between train and metro there. I'll have to tell you this, Auckland really gave me a surprise with Waitemata Station, because when you took a look at it, it seemed like just another station, but not boring though. It depends on which part. There is no boring part to Waitemata. There's either the more newish side or the far more traditional classic side. But the best part of Waitemata Station is when you pass the entrance gates and go down to the platforms, and you might even catch sight of basically light smashing all the way right down to the platform level. And so Waitemata is now my favorite station in the Southern Hemisphere so far. It's also very close to Waitemata Harbour. Now here's one thing you might not have noticed. You know me, like I said, for the microphone and for the trains, but this time, this journey to the Southern Hemisphere added something else. Speedboats, that's right. Like the last thing you would, probably know me for, because apart from Fluelen, where there is a boat to train, what's it called? Like a cross-platform interchange close to platform number 1. Boats aren't really integrated into the train network, although China's changing this by basically including cross-platform interchange between the high-speed railway train close to the Qionghai states and the high-speed boats that will take you all over to Hainan Island. So they're working on that. But like you would least expect me to think about trains and then suddenly go, slamming down the throttle, although I don't slam it down like that. Being a trains guy, the one thing I did when I took the speedboat out was the way I would start and stop the speedboat. I thought, I've been traveling on trains for over 500,000 kilometers globally, in China, in particular. And the way Chinese and Swiss trains started and stopped were always that smooth. I like it that smooth. Why can't I, when I'm at the helm, actually make the boat start and stop as smooth as a high-speed train? And that was something certainly unexpected for my Auckland journey. In fact, when I went to Waitemata station, I was like, that's nice. We have a really good platform. We have we have a Starbucks, but that's it. That's it for rail. On to the next station. No, not so much so. On the 2nd of August, it was speedboat time. And like the first high-speed journey in August 2008, when you have an experience that's so wow, you can't really stop. So Lake Taupo was next for my second speedboating adventure in Oceania, and we finally did make it all the way down to Wellington. Now, the card in Wellington is a snapper card, and I like it because it's little fish icon. It links closely to the Chinese proverb "Ru Yu De Shui," basically, a fish finding itself around in the water, happily jumping about. And that's basically how public transport should be. You should simply be able to hop on and tap off. So what's with the single tickets? Because I knew these single tickets across the planet were being phased out. So I thought, why don't I get a snapper card, but for at least one journey, buy the single journey tickets for all of us 3 traveling on board, the entire family. And that's pretty much what I did. Other than that, the snapper card was pretty much like just any other transport card, anywhere else. But I bought that, but the single journey tickets, it reminds me to the Metro card in New York, which I also bought back in 2025 when I was finishing the Americas leg. But cards increasingly, you want those to be diverse. So snapper cards, AT Hop cards, and Sydney's Opal cards, pretty much the same thing. Now, the one thing though is in Oceania, it's a case of every local authority does its own cards, which is a little bit weird for someone coming in from China, because China is doing its own norm called China Tea Union. And the idea is, yes, every city will issue its own card, but in the end, all you need is one card with the Tea Union logo on it to use across not just all mainland cities, but increasingly, they're extending that to Hong Kong and even Macau. And I've never tried a Tea Union card in Hong Kong or Macau, which could make it pretty much one of the next journeys I'm going to be taking. And speaking of which, Asia is where we're headed right next. And of course, the city of Beijing. This concludes a 2 summer holiday run across all continents: Europe, Asia, Africa, the Americas, and most importantly now also Oceania. It also concludes the end of my sort of long holiday in the southern hemisphere, the longest so far in that part of the planet, and just around 1 month in New Zealand. That 1 month, certainly one that I'm not going to forget anytime soon. The speedboats, the train journeys, tackling desert road, everything like that. It was an adventure, but it's a good adventure to have. You're stuck in the Northern Hemisphere for so long, and all the other countries you've been in are pretty much Northern Hemisphere. New York, London, Paris, Zurich, Beijing, Hong Kong. What about Oceania? What about, say, Sydney and Auckland and Wellington? And I don't really consider myself so much of a global citizen if I've not spent some proper time down under. And this is exactly what this journey has given me. But the journey takes me next to Asia again. Although there were options for me to stay, at the end of the day, the rail world across Asia and especially Greater China was so monumental in development that by foregoing, China and the rest of East Asia, especially because I have a Chinese green card, far more than anything else, if I left that environment, it's not just talking about, new territories, can I make, new connections? Yeah, I think I could do that. But the fact that you're missing out on the biggest train development story in recent years. The fact that Beijing is opening up two new interprovincial metro lines, subway lines. One to Pinggu, going via Hebei, and another one going straight into Xun'an. The fact that very soon we will have a second high-speed railway going via Beijing and Xun'an all the way down to Hong Kong. The fact that they're thinking about and actually building another line going from Beijing and Xun'an all the way to southwestern China, which could take you to Kunming eventually. And from Kunming, isn't it simply a hop on a train to Laos? China, like it or not, is the place where all of the big infrastructure things are happening. And to forego China and to settle down in a completely new part of the world, it's an intrepid idea. It's a challenge I consider taking, except for that China really is the place to be if you're a trains person. It may not be the place to be if you're a speedboat person, but it certainly is the place to be if you are a trains person. So, very soon I'll be announcing here on my YouTube channel what's next for me going back into China, and there'll be a lot more to share with you. So far though, the Southern Hemisphere has been special to me for one thing. If you are into speedboats, you're also into navigation, and when it gets dark, especially in the days before GPS, you would have to take a look at the skies. And for the longest time ever, I was in Australia at age 17, but I didn't see the Southern Cross. And this time, I caught it on many different occasions, like, finally. It's another lifelong journey met. I've seen the Big Dipper, and now I've seen the Southern Cross. That leads me, though, to Southern Cross Station in Melbourne, which I hope I'll be able to take a look next time I'm down under.